Welcome to season 1 of the Resilient Dad Show. When I became a single dad and had to navigate social parenting issues and the complexity of the family legal system, I felt confused and alone with nowhere to turn. That's why I've created the Resilient Dad Show, a place that I so badly needed and wish had been available during the grueling and challenging times of working through my own experience. This show will feature industry experts in mental health, social services, and personal development, along with resilient dad role models whose stories of overcoming the challenges of co-parenting will create a new vision for the life you and your kids deserve. If you have any questions or want to suggest a future guest on the show, please visit resilientdad.fm for more information. Welcome back to the Resilient Dad Show. I'm Pat DiDomenico, your host, and on today's episode, we have the pleasure of having Chris Decker. Chris, welcome again to the show. Thank you very much for your time.
You bet.
Today, we're going to be discussing a documentary that Chris actually shared with us called The Work, a documentary about men in the United States who come together, men who are spending time in maximum, prison, some men that will never ever see the outside again, and also men from the general public who come together for a 4-day period to work on their personal challenges to essentially heal themselves. Chris, one, thank you very much for recommending the documentary. Loved it. And two, tell us your thoughts and on the actual documentary.
Yeah. Without spoiling it, because I think anybody listening would benefit from watching this movie. Even seeing the trailer sends chills down my spine every time and gets me a little bit worked up, because you realize really quickly that we are all, as men, carrying these wounds from childhood, from early in our lives, and even later in our lives, that we create, from these hurts, from these traumas, we create hang-ups and we create defense mechanisms around it. And when we create all these defense mechanisms, it may help us survive in the moment when we're younger. But today, as adults, it could lead to very destructive patterns and habits and behaviors, many of which, as expressed in the movie, have led to these men getting behind bars in the first place. But if you really understand the root of what they went through, and you would understand how they were driven to those things, and you might even see how you yourself could have been driven to those things too. And behind bars, outside in the quote unquote real world, what is the real world anyway? We are all more alike than we are different. And that was my main takeaway.
I couldn't agree more, especially with that we are more alike than we're actually different. One of the most common themes that I saw was that, everyone had the desire and the need to be loved and cared for. And it was due to experiences that they had in their younger days that really impacted the direction their life went into, and even the relationships that they formed and the challenges that they had. And it can really boil down to just a few simple events. Neglect would have been one of the bigger things. I know in my own, looking back now and being able to have perspective on my life, that a lot of my behavior patterns were conditioned from such a young age, an age where you think it wouldn't really impact you as an adult. But when you actually, do the work and you start peeling back all those layers, you can actually relate it back to some sort of event or a point in your life where it's like, wow, this really did impact me in this particular way. And is there a particular time in your life after you watched the documentary that you could think of something that you're like, wow, I didn't realize that was something that really impacted my life now as an adult?
Yeah. It had to do with my mom. And I know a lot of the stories in the movie have to do with fathers, but it had to do with my mom and the abuse from when I was younger, when she did drugs, in this case meth. She would go on really manic episodes. And one specific episode, or a few specific episodes, one was she wanted me to find her keys, and she just beat me around the apartment as she got me to try and find her keys. Like, where the F are my keys? Where's my keys? And then one time, she asked me to make her food, and I didn't know how to cook. I'm 7 years old, and so I try to make her food. And apparently I didn't get it right. And she smacked me and threw the frying pan at me. And I've been so angry at her, and I've been holding in that anger, and I'm not able to even forgive her unless I can allow myself to be angry about the past and to actually properly express it. And I brought this exact scenario to my counselor, and my counselor suggested that I go to what here in the US it's called a rage room, where you can actually pay a little money to go to a facility where you put on full armor and you get a weapon like a bat or a pipe or all kinds of fun weapons. And then they have these really realistic sets of they have old cars. They have full kitchens set up, apartments, stuff.
Wow.
And they're playing just loud music, and you just go and start destroying stuff. And my counselor said, I think you should go to one of these places and just get it out of your system and just be angry.
Yeah. I guess one way to really let it out without doing something illegal or damaging someone's
you
property.
And I, we're big guys. We're huge. And if I get angry in public or in private, I'm scary. If I'm loud, if I truly yell at the top of my voice, my entire building would notice, and I would cause legal problems.
I guess even myself, the times where I've been in so much rage where I lose control, that's one of the most fearful experiences that I can have, and that does actually scare me. And then I realize that rage is due to a build-up of not releasing all these frustrations and these emotions, and being able to let these emotions out. That's the best thing we can actually do. And not to give away too much of the documentary, but when you see the release and the experiences that these men go through to come on the other side, the transformation is unbelievable. And some of their own transformations, even in their perspectives or opinions and judgments of one another. That's amazing how that also transforms. Here, we can make judgments of others, but not really understanding what their real journey is or story, which is really sad. But I believe if we can have the perspective of being coming open to trying to understand where the other person is actually coming through, whether it's even in, relationships, co-parenting, or the challenges someone might be having as a parent. Like, we don't know what they're dealing with on a daily basis with their child or their partner. And is that something that you've experienced or seen in, your journey as an adult, as well as, in your working career?
I'll just answer in another way, if you don't mind. Probably answer a different question. Hopefully, answering what you're communicating. Is the solution to being a healthy parent is actually remarkably simple. It's remarkably simple. It's myself that's getting in the way. I'm in the way. I am in the way of becoming a great father. And if I can learn to, quote unquote, die to self, if I can go and have the courage to go deal with those traumas and those hurts, and I can learn to forgive, and I can learn to stay in a state of gratitude, like the solution is remarkably simple. In practice, it's really hard because we don't, at least I used to have a fear of letting people see who I truly am. And for whatever reason, I was scared of anybody seeing me. But on the flip side, I cannot be a healthy adult without authentically expressing myself to other people. And so I have two options. I can either end up like one of the guys in the documentary that is behind bars for the rest of their life if I go down the destructive path, or I might literally end up dead somehow, whether by suicide or because I, did something I shouldn't be doing. Or I can choose to put on battle armor and go to war against this sort of sin, or to go to war against these forces trying to hold me back. And what I used to do to survive is no longer serving me as an adult. It's not serving my employees. It's not serving my family. It's not serving my wife, And I probably need to reverse the order. Like, it's not serving my wife. It's not serving my kid. It's not serving my company. And that's the truth.
And what are some things that you have been able to adapt to your life in moments of, where you have that tension building up and that frustration? Are there some things that you do to be able to help you deal with that, that moment instead of going to the battlefield?
Yeah. So it's pick up the phone, this 300-pound weight in our pocket, and call somebody that I trust, no matter how bad it is. And that is the single thing that if I can do that, there's a way out. There's a way out. I can call somebody and they can listen to what's going on, and then it'll pretty much instantly diffuse the situation and allow them to speak into the situation and say, Chris, you are being irrational. You have to remember what you're doing this for, and you need to calm the F down. Like, sometimes I need someone in my life to just tell me, dude, you're being a big baby. Calm the F down. Grow up.
Yeah. Oh, it's amazing that when we separate ourselves from the situation and we just talk ourselves through the experience or the moment with someone else, you're able to listen to yourself. And sometimes, even pull yourself up on it. It's like, well, I'm sounding really stupid here. I'm being really silly. Maybe it wasn't as bad as what I originally made it out to be.
It's never as bad as what we think, as what we have envisioned here in our minds. Never. Literally, if you wait 48 hours, it's a completely different perspective than in the moment of that frustration. Totally different. And this works with anything that's hard in your life. It works with negotiations. It works with disagreements. It works with all kinds of not easy to deal with situations. Instead of running, instead of hiding, instead of masking it with alcohol or drugs or destructive behaviors, let yourself feel the pain. Call someone else and share the pain that you're going through. Give yourself a little bit of time for perspective. And all of a sudden, you're on the other end of that pain. You've seen a solution become clear, and you just dealt with something like a healthy adult. And the formula is remarkably simple, as I'm saying. It's way simpler than the complicated messes that we've all made with our lives. It's way simpler. But in practice, it's hard to do and requires a lot of courage.
And do you think it's the ego that stops us from dealing with those emotions and being able to be vulnerable or even being honest with other people, because we want to feel like we're right? How could we possibly be wrong in the moment?
So imagine you're the CEO of a large financial services company, or the CEO of, or you're in a public position where people look to you, or you have shareholders, or you have stakeholders, or you have a community that's looking up to you in some way. Having to admit that weakness is based on a fear of losing everything you've built. There's an interesting shift though, is that the longer you live outside of the integrity, the worse your life's going to get. It happens every time. Like you can try and outrun it, but it's going to get you. Getting honest and being authentic might ultimately lead to a career change. It might lead to you doing something different. It might lead to some things changing. But most of the time, it brings the right people closer to you. And you may end up making the changes you should have made a long time ago. And nothing is worth the pain of living outside of integrity. If you are aligned and living in integrity with your values, and you can go to sleep at night knowing that you were a good human being to the best of your ability, nothing can compromise that peace of mind. No amount of money, no amount of fame or status can substitute that. It's impossible.
No. And being your authentic self is a lot more freeing than trying to be something else. It's very draining trying to please and put on a persona that it's not really you.
Have you ever tried to please or put on a persona that wasn't really you, Pat?
Pretty much most of my life. Someone always used to say that you're like a chameleon. You can adapt to any situation. It's like, well, it's probably what I had to do most of my life to make sure that everything was cool, and to make the chaos as calm as possible was to try and make everyone happy. And it can definitely get very, very draining. And the times where I've learned to just be myself and not be being apologetic for who I am are the times where I felt most free. And being able to be open and vulnerable with with people and, like producing this show. It's not something that I would have done before because I would have been too scared of judgment and the fear of what other people would think. But it's, this is me, part of my journey of being, my authentic self. So, Chris, I want to thank you again for your time and sharing your, some of your stories, and as well as, the documentary with me. It was a great insight for me, and a huge eye opener that, we can actually imprison ourselves. We may be free on a daily basis, but the only people that can really imprison us are ourselves. So thank you again. And to everyone, I hope you enjoyed this episode and gained value from it. This show is, for resilient dads on the journey to become, the best dads that they can be for their children. And we look forward to seeing you next time.